Hello, what you saying? I am gonna start with just a blank Ableton. Oh, I'm gonna start with a blank Ableton project. I'm gonna show you some essential little bits and bobs that you need to know to get going. And we're just gonna make a little beat. So I'm gonna show you some basic rhythms, like something to make a rap beat or a dance beat, or yeah, just show you how what's possible basically. So let's get cracking. I want to make this a nice short video, just for anyone who's starting out with Ableton. So you will start with actually a MIDI and an audio track. I've got two audio tracks here, but it doesn't really matter. So you'll start with two tracks. I would recommend, first thing you want to do is, it depends if you're using an audio interface or if you're just coming out of the headphone jack. If you're just coming out of the headphone jack, then you probably don't need to do anything. If you're using an audio interface, which I would recommend, you need to press Command and the little comma button, which are right next to each other here on the keyboard. Or you can go to Live and then Preferences, or if you're on PC, it's going to be Options and then Preferences. And then you'll see this little window here. If you click the Audio tab, you can select which audio device you're listening from. So if you're not getting any audio, that's the first place to look. Make sure that your output is sent to the right place, basically. You'll see that I'm using an aggregate, like a sort of multi-channel output, so that I can record the screen record and that I can hear my own audio coming back to me. But yeah, if you're just using an audio interface, you just go look for it. So mine would be Scarlett, and there it is. Okay, so you want to get cracking, you want to make some beats. The first place I would recommend to go is hit drums on the side here in categories. Ableton comes with loads of drums. Some of these are mine that I've made, so you won't see, there'll be a lot on this list that won't be on yours if you've just got Ableton. But a good place to start is just the 808 core kit. It's a classic drum machine sound that is used in loads of different genres. It was made in the late 70s or early 80s, and since then it's been synonymous with hip-hop, house music, and then all the pop subgenres that sort of evolved from those. And anything, dancehall, jungle, techno, like dubstep, like they all either rely on, at the most, or at the very least nod to the 808 core kit. So we want to make a beat. So the first thing I would say, if you want to make a beat, is let's start with a kick on the one, and then you need to decide you need to decide whether you're going to make this beat a half-time beat or if it's going to be a sort of normal time beat. So if it was normal time, you want to put the snare on the 2 and the 4. So I'm just going to put 2 there. This, what we're looking at, is just one bar. So you can see each of these increments is just a beat, basically. So let's just make that size of a beat. No, actually, that'll cause me problems later. So yeah, I'm going to leave that as it is. So this is the kick on the 1 and the snare on the 2 and the 4. So as you can see, you can probably imagine that we can get some kind of, like, if we put a kick drum on the 4 to the floor, we're getting a sort of techno kind of beat. And then you also want to offset that accent on the offbeat by putting a little hi-hat on the offbeat. So then we're just going to duplicate that. To duplicate one of these little boxes as well is basically, you just want to draw a dotted box around the beat or the amount of time that you want to be duplicating. So if you look at the very top, there's got this little sort of highlighted light blue bit that's going to tell you how much is going to be duplicated. So if I only went halfway with that and didn't get the whole bar, we would get something like this. So it would only move by an eighth note. So I want to move by a whole beat. So draw a box around it and then press Command and D, and then you can just keep doing that until you've filled out the bar. And then to sort of give a bit more energy to that kind of sort of house beat, is I'm going to now move this hi-hat. I'm going to take it off actually completely to start with, and then I'm going to put an open hi-hat on every offbeat instead now. So now we've got this sound. But you'll probably agree that's a bit that's a bit too long and a bit too open and airy. So we can close this hi-hat by if we put a closed hi-hat straight after this open hi-hat. They are set up in the sort of MIDI mapping where it's called a choke. So when one of those drums plays and it's ringing out, it will only ring out as long as another drum that is in that choke group isn't being hit. So if it is being hit, it'll just cut it off. You'll see what I mean now. So I'm going to put one just on the fourth measure of each beat, and now we get this kind of sound. And if we don't want to hear that hi-hat, we can then draw a box around all of these so they're all highlighted, and then down at the bottom here you've got what's called the velocity editor. So velocity, if you listened in physics, is just about sort of how fast something's going or how much energy is behind it, and that's the same for this. So it's just how much energy was behind the key before when we hit it. So we're going to take this meter right down to the bottom, so it's barely audible, and now we get that cut off open hi-hat, but we're not hearing that hi-hat. And then if we want to, we could even gradually bring it in. So I'm going to draw a box around it again, so I'm only editing the velocity of those drums, and I'm basically going to use this pen tool, which is B, or brush you could call it, B for brush, and then I'm going to basically make each of these so it's a very subtle effect, and it can be utilized in a much more satisfying way, but just to show you that you can create this kind of sort of an evolving, modulating sound just by changing the velocity of your drums throughout the loop, however long it is. We can also then make this sound have a little even more energy, just a little bit more, by adding another hi-hat just before it. So that again is just basically accenting one of the 16th notes, which is just going to give a little bit more energy and a little bit more pace to the track. So let's hear what that sounds like. And then even if we take away that snare, can build some tension like that and bring it back. And essentially that's what you want to be doing when you're making a beat. You basically, just to simplify it, you just want to make a part A and a part B. It can be as simple as that. You know, there are a lot of like sort of 90s Miami bass tunes, or even just some old early house music that was literally, or techno maybe is probably more likely, which is literally just a part A, part B, part A, part B. It's just this tension and release. It's this build up and then a drop, and then a build up and then a drop. So yeah, we create the tension by having no accent on the 2 and the 4. And now we have release. Cool. So that's the basics of like a sort of house, dance, techno style beat. I'm going to delete all of this now. I'm going to start again. We're always going to start with a kick drum on the first beat. Well, not always, but for what we're doing now, just the basics of making beats. A kick drum on the first beat is, you know, always a safe way to start your session. So now we're going to do something that's a bit more like a half-time beat. And what I mean by that is it just means that the snares play half the time. So before, when we had 2 snares within one beat, within one bar, sorry, we're now just going to have 1 snare. So it's not going to be on the 2 and the 4, it's going to be on the 3rd beat. And what we can do then is we can increase our tempo. So we're at 17.17 for some reason. I don't know how it got onto there. Maybe it was a sample I brought in earlier. So let's just bring it back to 120, just because that odd number was annoying me a little bit. So let's hear what this sounds like now, just with the kick on the 1 and the snare on the 3. So there's lots of space going on in there. There's lots of room for us to fill that with stuff. And it sounds quite slow and kind of lazy for now. But because we've got our 16th notes, we've got double the amount of 16th notes in between each accent. So we've actually got more room to create some more energy. And I really love that kind of balance of, yeah, like a kind of mellow backbeat, where the kick and the snare are kind of like got a sort of slow pace to them. But then there's other things, the synth and the hi-hats and whatever else are kind of creating this energy, and it kind of creates this duality of where all the top end is really energetic and most of the bottom end is kind of a bit more mellow. Yeah, a lot of my favourite music follows that kind of pattern, like jungle and whatever else. So we're now going to flavour this up a little bit. So we've got the kick on the 1 and the snare on the 3. I'm actually going to duplicate this now, so we're looking at 2 bars, just because it gives me, because we've now half the time of this of the pulse. We just want to extend it so that there's more possibilities to add more variation. So what will I do first? So let's just accent our beat with a hi-hat. Again, subtle, simple move, but it can just sort of add an extra flavour. It's just, it sounds a little bit more like a whole beat now that it's got that kick drum on, the hi-hat on top of the kick drum. Now we're going to put another one on every beat. And again, I'm just drawing a box around it, making sure that my region is the exact size that I want it. And then I press Command and D, and it will move everything along to whatever I've set it as. So 2 beats there. Okay. Now we've got a bit more of a flow. This is almost like a bit more of a hip-hop track, but I want to give this a little bit more energy. So we're going to turn the BPM up to about 135, let's say. Cool. We're going to add a little bit more energy now just by putting another hi-hat in between those hi-hats. And in fact, I'm actually going to make this first one a little bit softer. And the way I'm going to do that is by double-clicking to bring up this MIDI hit. But then if I hold down my second click, I can move up and down with my mouse, and you'll see that the colour or the shade changes as I do that, and also the velocity meter at the bottom also changes. So we can change the velocity in real time as we're adding notes to the MIDI piano roll. So I've got one that's a little bit soft, and the offbeat one is a little bit harder. So now I'm drawing a box around that, the whole beat, and I'm duplicating that, and you'll see that my softer one on the first beat is now overriding those other ones, because I'm taking it with me as I'm sort of duplicating it along. Okay, let's hear what we've got now. Okay, so now we can just sort of have some fun and throw some kick drums around. And I literally, whenever I am showing someone, like a young person, how to make beats, at this stage, be random as anything. So I'm just going to put one here. Like putting them on the off beats and the 16th beats will just create more liveliness. And there will be a point where you want to start withdrawing some of those hits. You'll get to a point and it'll start to sound too busy. You don't want it to have too many things that aren't anchored to the pulse going on, but the odd one just adds a little bit of flavour. One time I heard, I can't even remember, it might even be a sample in a song, but there's I've heard an interview with someone basically saying, with music, when you're playing to an audience or making songs for an audience, to put it in simple terms, you give them a load of you give them a load of patterns that they can latch onto quickly, but then you throw them a little wrong and they go, oh, what happened there? And then you bring it back to the right, and because it threw it out to something that they didn't compute in real time, but then you brought it back to the pulse that they can compute, it just creates this kind of thrill of it's all subconscious. No one's actually thinking this on the top of in the forefront of their mind. But when you're dancing to a really cool DJ, and you sort of get locked into the beat or the rhythm, and then he throws something in there that's completely different, and then brings it back to what you were originally dancing to, or brings it back to a place that you can understand. Yeah, it creates this really cool kind of thrill effect. So be thinking about that whenever you're making beats and patterns. That goes for art, in speech, in anything, just to keep people entertained. You know, throw them a little thing they weren't expecting, and then give them the thing that they thought they understood. So yeah, okay, so we've got some kick drums, we've got some energy going on. I've turned that down a little bit just so I could speak, but hopefully it's not too quiet for you guys now. And then, like I said before, you want to make part A and part B. So let's say that's part A, let's say this is part B. So I've just duplicated this. And part B for a sort of rap style beat could just be something like, and you know what, I'm going to put the snare on the 4 here. So again, we're just creating some tension, so you want to like hint at there's a fat beat coming up, but you don't want to give them the fat beat yet. So see, again, because that snare isn't on the downbeat, it throws the listener off and it creates this tension, but also lets them know, keep listening, because something else is coming soon and it's probably gonna bang. Okay, so we've got a part A and we've got a part B going there. Now let's go for a part C. So let's take part A and then let's make this a little bit more energetic in itself. So this could now be like the chorus or just a variation which could alternate with part A, just to keep it fresh. Obviously we've only got 2 bars going here, so there's not much to keep the listener interested, so to speak. So let's just throw some of these little 16th notes in here. And again, it's like with the random kick drums, you can be random with it, but don't go too harsh. Let's change that to C. And actually, I'm going to change the color of this track at the top, which might seem pointless, but this is what I and many producers like to call housekeeping. It's just keeping things nice and tidy, so that later when you come back to the project, or when you've got loads of things going on, it's visually easy to pick out what is what. So if you hear a mistake, you know how to find it easily, or if you hear something you want to change, you know how to find it. Okay, so we've got part C, and part C has just got more hi-hats, but I'm also going to switch up this kick drum pattern, and I'm going to take, so I have this first kick drum on the very first beat of this bar. I'm going to make something a little bit unusual and put the kick drum on the off beat of that. So let's hear what that sounds like. Again, I'm just experimenting, I'm improvising, I haven't pre-planned any of these patterns or anything. I'm kind of showing you how you can be random and you can just sort of dive in, and as long as you've got the main points, like a kick drum on the 1 and a snare on the 3, you can get creative and make up new patterns and new rhythms and new syncopations. So let's go. Okay, we've got, which I probably should have guessed, we've got a bit of a giddy up kind of feel to that, which is cool, but that isn't what I was aiming for. So let's try and get, maybe let's put some on there. Yeah, that's a bit more what I was after. Yeah, let's try that. And again, you'll notice my hi-hat pattern is different here on the first bar than it is on the second bar. So with this kind of sort of rap, trap, drill style music, which is this is sort of leaning towards, you get those kind of machine gun hi-hats, I like to call them. So the way we do that is just by putting loads of hi-hats next to each other, and the way we do that is just by zooming in and changing the width of the grid by pressing Command 1 to narrow it, or Command 2 to widen it. So we want to make it a little bit more narrower because we want each of those hi-hats to be a little bit shorter, a little bit close together. I actually think we're going to want to go even shorter than this, but there is a reason why I'm starting here, because there's another function I'm about to show you. But let's just hear what we've got there. Okay, that actually sounded pretty good, I like it, but I'm going to copy this now, so I can just draw a box around that, press Command and C, or Control and C if you're on a PC, and And then I'm going to put one. That was at the end of the second beat on that one. So let's put this one. Let's put one on the. Oops, that was. There we go. So yeah, I want to make these a little bit even shorter, like twice as short. So the way I can do that is because I've got these highlighted here now. There's a load of options at the edge here, at the edge on the side, and the first ones that we've got at the top are, well, up here at the top it tells us what note is being played. So if you wanted to play that manually on the keyboard, it's telling you that it's F sharp 1. So we could find that by, there we go, got it first time. So that's a good way of knowing what key that drum is on if you wanted to play it live. But what I'm actually over here to do is looking at these little options that have a little design and then a number 2. So we've got like a colon, 2 dots, and then a number 2, and then a star, an asterisk, whatever you want to call that, and a number 2. So the colon 2 is to half, and the star 2 is to duplicate by 2, I think. Let's hear and see what this does. Yeah, so that's just made those even quicker now. And then I'm going to Command and D. It's going to put another set next to it. So now, compare that to our first little machine gun hi-hat run. We've just got 4, but now we've got 8 in the same space. So let's hear what that sounds like. Yeah, so, and then let's just, for the fun of it, let's just go even quicker until it starts sounding ridiculous. So yeah, that's starting to sound ridiculous. Starting to just not sound like a hi-hat anymore and sounds like a sort of like a zip or a malfunction of some kind. But I'm going to do something more creative with this now, so I don't just want to leave it there going zzz, like a little fly's just buzzed onto the drum kit. We're going to add some musicality to this, and to do that we need to create some modulation in that short amount of time. And we're going to bring back this, oops, I've clicked away. So I'm going to bring back this velocity editor, and I'm going to go for Command B, or I think you can just press B actually, yeah, B, for the brush tool, and then I'm going to draw a diagonal line from this bottom here. Oh, so you'll see what's happening here. It's only letting me draw via the increment of a 16th note, a 4th measure of whatever that is. Is that a beat? 2 beats. So I'm going to press Command and 1, make that grid really narrow. That's narrow enough because there are as many lines on the grid as there are MIDI hits. Actually more. So now I can edit each one individually, and I'm going to create this kind of sort of sweep kind of effect. So let's have a listen to that. Yeah, that's good, but just for the demonstration, I actually want to make it a little bit more drastic. So let's try this. Yeah, that was more what I was going for. So now that I have that little pattern, I can now get a little bit, and again, you know, it's less is more. So, you know, we don't want to abuse this, but now I have this little guy that I can copy and I can put it anywhere. So it's gonna land it on the hi-hats, but then if I use the arrow keys up and down, I can move it to another drum. So I'll put it there, and if I move it, if my first move is to move it away from the hi-hats, it'll keep the pattern that I had there before. If I do something else and then try and go back and move it away, it's already overwritten those hi-hats. So make sure if you're trying to use that on another drum, make sure it's your first move is to move it away. Whether it's you dragging it from the mouse, or I would recommend using the arrow keys, because you can really sort of just precisely bop it about like that. And you can also move it in terms of time, depending on whatever you've got your grid set to. So let's try that on one of the congas for a bit of fun. Yeah, that one. And I didn't mean to, but I've accidentally taken this extra beat at the end, so I'm going to get rid of that one. Although it probably... yeah, it might have sounded fine. Okay, that isn't what I wanted to hear. Let's try it with one of the... let's try it on the cowbell. Interesting. I think they're too close together. So now we're going to use this tool and we're going to undo what I did before. We're going to use it for the opposite reason. But because I've already edited the velocity, it will keep that pattern even though it's being extended twice. So there we go. So let's try that now. We should be able to actually hear some cowbells, you know, ringing out rather than just this sort of glitchy sound. Yeah, that sounded pretty cool. Let's try it on the conga. Yeah, interesting. Let's duplicate it even longer. Let's see what that does. But so yeah, I hope you can get the, you know, the modulation of amplitude of that drum in that short amount of time is what's giving it that kind of human, or not even a human because it is still quite robotic, but it's giving it what's the word? It feels more natural in a way. It doesn't sound so robotic. You know, if all the drums were being hit at the same velocity through the whole thing, it was just going to sound robotic, obviously. So, what's next? Okay, so let's add a little bass line to one of these. So we've got part A, part B, part C, and I'm going to just demonstrate how important it is to color code everything appropriately. Actually, B should be a bit darker. Maybe that one. Okay, so we've got a little drum beat going. I'm going to go over now to instruments, and then I'm going to open operator. Whoops-a-daisy, I've just made a mistake. I was hovering, sorry, I had highlighted, I had selected our drum kit. And when I double clicked this MIDI instrument, because they're both MIDI tracks and they're both MIDI instruments, it overwrote, right? It basically, it got rid of the drum kit and it put this synthesizer on top. So now we get this, which I'm not even mad about, you know what I mean? That could be an inspiration to lead us somewhere else. And that's something we'll maybe cover in another video, using drum MIDI in a synthesizer and seeing what it does, you know. So anyway, let's undo that with Command and Z. We've got our core kit back, and then I'm actually going to drag this into the open space. Actually, I could drag that into open space, but let me show you something that might save you some time. I can click this audio track, and because it's an audio track, you can't put a MIDI instrument on an audio track. So if I double click it now, it's just going to appear next to it. So I actually find that a little bit easier, especially if I've got a lot of stuff going on. If I want to add a new instrument, I would just select a random audio track and then double click it, and then I just know that nothing's going to be overwritten. It's just going to be left on the edge there, because I sometimes find the drag and drop just a little bit annoying. So we've got an operator here, and what I'm actually going to do is, yeah, take this pattern over to here, and I'm going to get rid of all the hi-hats. But we're going to keep this kick and snare pattern, right? We may be on the wrong octave, but there's only one way to find out. Okay, so, and I don't want it to start in C. I want it to start in fact, yeah, it can start in C, but then we're going to play it in C minor, so this is going to have a sharp in it. And then they're obviously really short, so I'm going to press Command and A to select all. And then I'm going to extend them so they're as long as just enough to fill that gap. And then I'm going to have to bring this one back, and bring this one back, and bring this one back. Okay, so now we've got a pseudo bass line which follows the kick drum pattern and the snare pattern. So hopefully there should be some harmony going on there. Let's just hear what this sounds like in terms of notes, because again, I haven't planned this. I'm just picking random notes out of a hat. Yeah, I think it sounds alright. So let's mess around with this bass sound a little bit. So when you open up an operator, you get what's called a sine wave. A sine wave is the purest tone that you can produce out of a synthesizer. It's just literally one frequency. To demonstrate what I mean by that as quickly as I can, I'm just going to pull up a spectrum and put that on the screen. So we can see here, we've only really got one note That's the fundamental note. But we want to add some more harmonics to that, and to do that, we're going to use something called FM synthesis, which is what the operator is designed for. So FM synthesis, in a really basic explanation, which I don't know if that's actually possible, is basically you start with a synth sound, you start with a waveform, and then you insert another waveform into it. It's almost like you multiply the frequency of that waveform by another one, and I bet I'm not using the right terminology here, and I bet this is actually there's probably people screaming at their screen right now. Basically, you use one waveform to modulate another waveform. So as you can see at the bottom here, where I'm sort of circling my mouse, it's got these 4 dots, and that's indicating that each of the oscillators are in series, so one goes through the other one. So basically, this last one is kind of like your master, and anything you do to the envelope on that is going to affect the overall sound, the envelope of the sound. Excuse me. So anyway, in simple terms, we're basically just going to put one sine wave into another sine wave, and it'll make it sound different. So without me chatting on anymore, I'm just going to show you. So now we've got more harmonics on the side here, as you can see. And that's giving it sort of the sound of another octave is now being played, which is good because we have that sub bass, but we also want our tune to be heard through little Bluetooth headphones and phone speakers and Bluetooth speakers and things that don't produce true audio. So it's good to have a good amount of top end on your bass for that reason, depending on where you're expecting it to be played. Then if we change the waveform in here, we get different sounds. So it's like a mix of a saw and a sine wave. Let's try a square. And the higher the number of the waveform, it's basically saying how many more harmonics there are in that. So it's, I think for a bass line, let's start really nice and low. And then if we add a third one, and we can do some really cool stuff by modulating it like that, changing what course it's on, which is basically like which octave is being played, I believe. Again, someone's probably screaming at the screen right now going, it's not an octave, it's a whatever. I don't care, it sounds fun. So basically, now we've got this sound, but it sounds a little bit boring. I think that sounds alright, or it's got something for us to work with. So now we've got all this top end going on the bass. Now we basically just want to scale it back by, over here we have a filter frequency parameter, and it's resonance as well. So this is a diagram of the filter, so I'm going to bring it down. In fact, I'll let the sound play while I'm talking. So as you can see, as I come down, it's sweeping through those frequencies with the resonance. Depending on how high I have the resonance, it'll basically it'll basically boost whatever the last frequency band is as it cuts them all off. And you can get this kind of cool wah effect. Okay, so now I've brought it back down. So now that just sounds like a sine wave again. Why have I done that? That seems pointless. I've just added some more higher harmonics and then I'm taking them away. But sometimes that is the process of things, you know. It seems like we're going backwards, but we're actually just taking a step back to then pivot off into another direction. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm going to modulate that frequency filter with this LFO up the top here. So I'm going to turn LFO on. I'm going to turn it on. You've got all these, the destination is basically what is going to be affected by the LFO. So it's currently set to all the synthesizers. We don't want that because that's going to modulate the pitch of those synthesizers. So I'm going to turn all of them off, and then I'm going to turn on filter, because that's what I do want to modulate. And when I say modulate, I basically just mean an LFO just means a low frequency oscillator. So an oscillation is just this, something that goes round and round and round and round. It just oscillates. So a low frequency oscillator means it's going to create this kind of, you know, loop effect via a low frequency, the frequency meaning how many times it's going round, but we can change how many times it's going round, and how much of the filter it's affecting. So first of all, I need to, this rate is currently set at just a sort of a random MIDI increment, but I want to sync it up. So yeah, we've got low, high, which would then make it a high frequency oscillator, I guess. Then we've got sync. So we want sync. So now instead of numbers, we've got fractions, and those fractions are the beat to which our song is playing to. So whatever we change the tempo to, this will be in time. And then we can also get a little bit funky by automating this later on. So, but first, let's just sort of get a simple pulse going with this. So our filter frequency is down. The envelope amount is yeah, okay. Oh wait, no. The amount, there it is. So I'm gonna turn this up, and it's gonna, often when you're starting with something new or you're starting a new idea, make it as drastic as possible, make it as crazy as possible. Turn everything up full and then scale it back a little bit, or turn it all down and scale it up a little bit. And there's no point messing around in the middle, because you've got no reference as to, you know, how much or less we could be adding. I don't know why I'm laughing. So anyway, I've turned up the amount. I got a grimy little bass line. Let's turn up the resonance on that. So we can get that real sweepy kind of sound. I'm going to turn the frequency up a little bit now. But I think that amount is too much, so let's bring it down a little bit. Also, by bringing the amount down, we're also reducing the amount of space that the oscillator has to move, so you get these kind of smoother transitions rather than it going whoa 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 whoa. It's now just going whoa, dude. Okay, and so now I could automate that by, I could either go into the automation section and automate that, which we'll probably do in another video, but I could also perform it by using my arrow key. So up and down will move that, but only by one increment, unfortunately. So you kind of have to, if you want to move past 2, you kind of have to get a little bit slick with it, and it is possible, you know, to move to from a quarter note to a 16th note without hearing all those other ones in between. So anyway, without further ado, let me show you how that is, how we go about that. And again, by using the triplet sort of, are they called triplets? Anyway, by using the fractions which are divisible by 3, like 1/12 or 1/6, again, it creates this syncopation, this sort of human sounding feel to it. Sort of, it's not tight to the grid, it's not tight to the pulse, it's like a little bit more freeform, but it's still in time within the beat. So let's bring that back now with our beat. I have no idea what this is going to sound like, by the way. I don't know what genre you're going to call this or what, but let's just give it a go. And, you know, I'm going to admit that bass line is sounding a little bit dead. It's like sounding a little bit boring. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add some more syncopation. and more randomness. So how are we going to do that? Well, I think I should I quite like how that beat there. I just pointed at the screen like as if you can see what I'm pointing at. This here, I like that comes in on the offbeat. So I want to do more of that. So I'm going to bring this one in on the offbeat. And then I also think this beat landing on the snares is maybe a little bit too obvious. So now let's move that over a little bit. And yeah, let's do that. So now we've got a little gap of silence here. Again, I don't know what this is going to sound like. I'm trying to imagine it a little bit, but it's the fun of, sort of, it's almost just like hitting the one-arm bandit, the flipping, what do they call them? The things in the casino, let's just see what comes up. Okay. Something's right and something's not right. Let's actually just make this as long as we can. And make that one shorter. And look, yeah, there could be better bass lines out there in the world. But we're just going to stick with that one for now. And I've gone for quite a funky bass line there actually, or trying to go for a sort of melodic bass line, but we could just, let's use that. In fact, let's turn this, call this bass line 1. Oops, it's bass line exclamation mark, but I know what that means. Bass line, and now we're gonna have to keep the pattern going, so it's bass line @ sign. And let's change the color of this just to keep on top of what we're doing. So the bass is now going to be green, and I'm going to rename that. The quick shortcut to renaming something is just Command and R for rename. So yeah, I've gone for like I've sort of tried to use randomness there to create a sort of melodic bass line, and it doesn't always work, and I don't know if you think that's worked. I personally think it sounds a bit dead, but it's also workable. We can do something with it, or it can be a jumping off point for sure. But let's do something like this. Let's keep it pure simple bass line. So we're just going to have this note repeating twice over the bar, and then on the fourth measure we have it going up to the D sharp. Are we going to do something similar here? I can't help but try and be random. I'm just so random, Yeah, and then you could like break it up a little bit more with the modulating the frequency filter and the fractions. By making the bass line a lot more simple, we can now do a lot more with the rhythm of it. So, okay, let's add one more instrument. So, Ableton's got some cool sounds. I'll be honest, out of all the DAWs out there, it's probably got the most limited and sort of basic sounding stock sounds. I quite, I don't see that as a bad thing, because I just use them all as a as just like an ingredient. I'm not gonna pull out a grand piano and then that's gonna be, I'm not gonna leave it as that. And sometimes when a sound is more basic, it gives you, again, like with that bass line, it gives you more freedom to basically add your own flavor to it. So I have just remembered that I think my grand piano is broken. Let me just try it. Where's the original grand piano? This one. I actually think this is missing some audio files, which would be embarrassing, and I don't know how that's happened. Oh wait, no. Oh no, it's fine. We'll just edit that out. Or maybe not. In fact, yeah, we're just going to keep this as one long continuous thing, I think. Anyway, so now I have a grand piano, I have a keyboard here, But I also have my QWERTY keyboard. So if you go up to the top right hand corner, there's like a little keyboard icon here. If I have that highlighted, it means now that all my letters from A to L are all the white notes. A, B, and C, which can be confusing, but G is G. So if you use G as your anchor point, you always kind of know where you are. G is G and H is A. And then in between them, we've got some black notes as well. So the D sharp would be on the E, and the C sharp would be on the W. So yeah, hopefully you can sort of find the pattern of that. There's no velocity information coming from these, so we are limited to that. But yeah, just to give you a demonstration that you can make music in the box without having to have an external keyboard or anything. I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to press record here, and I've armed it to record, and then I've just pressed play just so that now all I have to do is press the space bar, and it'll start recording for me. It'll give me a 4-beat counting, and then it'll start recording. So let me find the chord that I'm on. Something around C minor. So let's have a little go, and it seems that I'm doing reggae stabs on this, I guess. And then I just pressed, all I did was just press enter right before the end of the beat was about to end, and now it's looping it for me. So we've got some stuff going on there that's sounding alright, but again, let's focus on some housekeeping. So I'm going to get rid of that audio track because nothing's happening on it. I've made my grand piano yellow so it stands out nice and bright, visually, not audibly, but it is also quite a nice bright piano, and I can change the brightness with it here. I digress. So first thing I want to do is pretty much every software instrument, every sample, not every, but most, it's good to, let me start this again. It's good to assume that every software instrument and every audio sample is going to come with a load of junk information, and it's usually located in the bottom end. So this obviously doesn't apply for something that's like a bass sample or a kick drum sample or something that we want there to be low end in. This applies to everything else. So I've got a piano here, and I'm going to put this EQ on it, which comes with a little spectrum visualizer, and you'll see what I mean. So when I press, in fact, let's just solo that, so you'll see what I mean. So yeah, look at all this. There's all this audio information going on down here, which we do not need. So I'm going to just show you what that is. So if you're wearing headphones, you might be able to hear a little thump. If you're listening through your laptop, you definitely won't be able to hear anything. And if you've got monitors, then yeah, you might be able to hear it. Oh, let's make that a sharper cut off just so we can really hear. So check that. I'm not hearing anything coming out of my monitors, but there's something going on there in terms of the information that's in that audio output. You know, it matters. So let's open this back up, and I'm going to add the same kind of curve to our first parameter, which is number 1. And I'm going to bring this up to a point until it starts sounding like it's changing the sound. Oh, there we go, we passed it. Let's go again. Okay, so I feel like it's starting to actually cut off the fundamental note there. And then if I wanted to, you know, I could have it a bit more airy sounding and really add some more space into the track. I could have like, you know, a real sort of like tinny piano going on. But that to me sounds like something that would be used in more like a build up, again, adding sort of tension to it. So we'll leave that open. And you'll notice now what's happening on my right hand side here. There's too much stuff going on and all my levels are set to 0. So we don't want that. So the easiest fix for that, I haven't done any mixing yet, so but we do want to keep that below 0. So the master output, if anything is peaking in the master output, it's just going to be lost. It's not going to add anything to your mix. Or yeah, sometimes I guess it's less of an issue now, but a lot of people coming from analog equipment or using guitars, or people who like to use distortion in analog equipment, when they first get into producing, they think, oh yeah, I'm going to distort everything, I'm going to put everything higher than it should be going through, and that'll make it sound beefier and more aggressive and have more, warmth or harmonics. But that doesn't happen with digital audio. So anything that's above that 0 mark, anything that's causing it to peak, is just going to be kind of squared off, and you get this kind of like poorly dithered kind of digital crushed, compressed kind of sound. So we don't want that at all. Kind of like when you like compress a JPEG over and over, it's going to give that kind of quality. It's like it's going to come with a load of bits, and some stuff just isn't going to sound how it was in the mix. And let me tell you a little story, because when I first started producing, that happened to me loads. So none of my friends were musicians or producers, so none of them had any idea about what went into it, or how many variables there are when it comes to sort of mixing and bouncing a track. And I embarrassed myself so many times by creating a wicked like garage bassline tune or something like that, and going out to show my mates thinking, oh yeah, they're going to buzz off this one, and then putting it in their car and then being like, hang on, and sometimes just pulling the aux out, like, because I didn't want them to hear it, because that isn't the tune I was listening to in my bedroom. And they'd look at me like, yeah, whatever, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no, seriously, it sounded much better in my bedroom. And they're like, yeah. But now I realise it's because I was letting everything peak. I was letting everything go over the red line. And so the piece of audio that I got out of the computer after that was not true to what I was listening to in the box. So, story time over. Let's actually fix this thing. So, I'm going to select one of the tracks at the top and then press Command and A. And then I'm going to bring everything down to about 12, which is quite far actually, but so now everything is probably really quiet for you guys, so let me turn it up a little bit more. But I want to keep it below 6, because about 6 dB headroom is about the minimum amount that you need when you come to master your track. Again, there'll be another video on that, we're not going to go into it now, but it's good to keep. Basically, you want to mix your track low because you can always turn it up later. But what if you mix it loud, you can't then bring things down and tame things after it's already been bounced like that, So we can always make it bigger. We can never, we can never fix anything to do with, what I just said. So yeah, basically, we're just going to bring this down so we've got a little bit of headroom. But yeah, it's quieter to me now, and it's probably quieter to you, so I don't know how you're going to handle this, but I'm going to turn up my speakers, basically. So now it's just as loud as it was before, but now I've got all this headroom, and you'll also maybe notice if you do this, it sounds clearer. The more headroom that you give yourself, the more room there is to fit more things in there, and it's just having more space for each instrument, So, and then even this kick drum as well, I think this kick drum's going to be giving some extra sub-bass information that we don't need. In fact, probably all of those drums are, but we're just going to fix it on a whole right now just to save time. So let's look at these drums. So again, I've added a cut-off, and that is a lovely kick drum. Maybe a little bit long for my liking, but we can edit that later. So I'm just going to do the same thing now. I'm going to keep these gain and the Q to just flat, and then I'm going to turn the frequency up until I start to hear it affect the kick drum negatively. So basically all I'm wanting to do is cut out all the junk. We don't want to change the sound at all. This is just sort of reductive EQing, just to sort of get rid of all the frills and stuff, think of it like this, yeah. It's like if you're making a collage and you're cutting bits out, but you're leaving like, you know, say you're cutting out a person or a tree or whatever it is. If you cut it right up to where the tree is, you've got loads of room then, like for, well, first of all, it doesn't look as messy, it looks neater. And second of all, you've just given yourself more room on the canvas, because now any room that was taken up by that outline that you were possibly going to leave is now free for something else to be in there. So it's just like that with your mix. So imagine your mix is almost like a canvas and you're trying to fit loads of different images and sounds into it. If too many things are overlapping in the same area, you're not going to see them on the collage, you're not going to hear them in your mix. So what I'm doing now basically is like, it's almost like I've cut out a drum kit roughly, and now I'm going in and I'm cutting right around the silhouette of the drum kit, and I make sure every little, you know, nook and cranny is being exposed. So, and because this bass line, this kick drum isn't moving around at all, it's just in one place, so it's quite easy to see where it needs to be. But remember to be using your ears, because if, like, you know, it might look like you're not cutting off essential information, but yeah, don't trust your eyes, trust your ears. Okay, so we've got, wait, which one was our intro one? Yeah, so this is, I didn't intend to, but it sort of sounded like a bit of a dubstep track in it, so we might as well make this 140. So yeah, we've got, you know, parts of a tune there. We could just be dropping those in and out. Again, I think the bass line needs more work, but, you know, bass lines usually need more work than like 5 minutes. What's one last thing I can show you, actually? So this is excluding anyone who's not got MIDI controllers. I'm just going to add something now that's like a little bit extra, so, and also maybe encourage you to get a MIDI controller. So I'm going to automate this rate down here and this amount, and also this frequency filter as well. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to hit MIDI, and if you have a MIDI controller plugged in and it has like little knobs and pots on it, then it should just be, you may have to change something in its own specific driver, but it should just be ready to latch onto any of these parameters that are highlighted in blue. Again, if it's not, or if you're having trouble with that, go to your preferences, go to MIDI link, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what all of this means. I just start turning things on and off until it starts working. And if I do need to figure it out, and I probably have done in the past, I'll do some Googling, and then I'll forget it 5 minutes later. Just because once it's working, I don't care anymore. So I'm going to click that rate, and now it's got a little box around it, as you can see, and I'm going to choose a pot. So now I've got 16/12. That's just telling me which MIDI parameter is controlling that, and the one next to it. Okay, and then let's take it off MIDI before I accidentally assign something to something else. So now I'm going to turn this up and down until it latches. There we go, we've got it, and we're going to start on an 8th note. And I'm going to turn this up and down till it latches. There we go. Start about halfway, no, about quarter of the way. And I'm going to turn this, actually, let's Control and Z. So it was at 283. So I'm going to latch on and then try and get it as close to that again. That'll do. Cool. And is there anything else I need to do? Oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to actually assign this delay to something over here and something over here. So let's remember B is our intro, so I'm just going to call it that. So B is our intro. A is our first sort of drop, the sort of simpler version of the beat. C is a more complex version of the beat. And baseline 1, baseline exclamation mark, is also a simpler version. So I'm now starting to map out how I think these parts are going to drop in and out. So I'm going to do a little performance for you now. So before I press play or do anything, I need to go over to the right here and click this little red button, and that's going to turn everything off. So if I hit play, nothing's happening. The global track is playing, and our timeline is moving along, but nothing's playing because we've not triggered anything in here yet. So without further ado, let's start with the intro drum and the piano, and I'm going to hit record on this as well, and you'll see why in a second. So while I'm performing this, I'm actually improvising the arrangement of the song, and I mean the arrangement over time, not the arrangement in terms of the amount of instruments I'm using. Okay, so let's go. Yeah, the bass line definitely needs more zest, but I think I've shown you quite enough in a shortest amount of time possible. So hopefully that's been useful. Hopefully I've not just waffled on and or whizzed over things too quickly. But yeah, that's how you can basically start with a beat, a bass line, and some chords. Oh hell, why don't we put a little melody to it? Okay, let's gonna improvise a little melody. So I'm gonna duplicate this, call that mel, call that chords. So now melody. Actually, yeah, there's one last thing I can show you now. So let's take away that bass line because it was kind of annoying me, to be honest with you. So we've got this little stab pattern going on. Do I have to have that enabled? I don't think so, not at this stage. Right, so this little circle here, this is like an overdub button, yeah? So this means that And to overdub something just means to record something on top of something that you've already recorded. So if I take this off fold, so I can press record here, and it's not going to make a new region, it's just going to allow me to record on top of this little chord sequence. And I'm going to make it twice as long, because usually the melody will probably be twice as long. Yeah, let's go. Something along those lines. Honestly, I thought I was going to do that first time. Right, let's try again. Okay, again, it's not the best little improvised melody in the world, but it'll do. And you can see how it's just recorded on top of what I've played. Hell, let's overdub a bass line. So like, oh no, damn, right, I was going to show you a trick then, but sometimes it just didn't work for some reason. Sometimes life is like that. So check this now. I'm going to press play. I'm not even recording, I'm not even hit overdub, but I just got a little flavour for something. But then if I press this little square thing at the top, it's politely remembered what I played. So like, yeah, you don't even have to be consciously recording to capture ideas. And I use that so much because I have this thing which some people have called red light syndrome, which isn't a real thing, but it's also a funny way of just acknowledging that sometimes when I press the record button, I can be playing something like virtuoso, or I think I'm playing it like virtuoso level, and then I press record and it's like and I don't know how to play anymore. So if you're one of those kind of people, you will benefit from this little auto capture button here. And just to show you again like how cool it is, so like look, nothing's even playing, I can just be like, oh wait, let me try something a bit more like, I don't know. So now look, this is not grayed out anymore, so if I press this, and it's even acknowledged what tempo I was playing it at, and it's now changed my BPM to 184, and it thinks I only want the last 4 bits, but I actually want the whole thing. So let's, oh no, it was right. See, the computer knows better. So yeah, I think that's it now. Let's wrap this up. So yeah, Ableton Basics: how to make a beat, how to make a bass line, how to add some chords, and other little tips and tricks along the way. So yeah, hope that's been good. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, show your mum, pet a dog. I don't know. Safe. See you in a bit.